Happy Sunday morning, guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I thought I might try something new here, a weekly work in progress or workbench video that I would release every Sunday morning. I did one early on a few months back, and I was pretty happy with it. And since my channel really helps me focus my creative efforts, I thought I would just make this a weekly show that I do. Just a workbench, Sunday workbench show. We'll call it that. So what you can see on my, let me adjust the camera a little bit. What you can see down below are some of my projects I'm working on at present. Everything from 10mm Epic 40K, which I've shown you guys some of this before, to full GW scale vehicles and Space Marines and other figures. Oh, check out this dude. I put him together last night. This is from the Atlan Forge Patreon. One of the Teutonic Marines. My only regret is I didn't pay attention to how this arm was angled, and I made his helmet going straight forward instead of maybe looking off to this side where his gun is pointing. My mistake. Still a cool model. I love this model. Look at those etchings in the chainsword. And look at this little cross dangling off there. Those are pretty cool. Unique shoulder pads. Awesome backpack. I don't know if I got it too low or not. Comment down below and tell me what you think. I think he's right. I think he looks good. But I may have put it too low. The top of the, you can see in there, the top of his backpack spot on his back, on his torso, meets the top of the flat spot on the backpack. So I thought that's where they were supposed to match up, but perhaps not. I maybe should have put it just a little bit taller, where you can see a little bit more of it in the back. But I can do that on the next one. That's the cool thing about 3D printing. You can always make more. Like Dorito says, eat all you want, we'll make more. This Space Marine back here, this is a GW model. I bought this, I bought a box of GW Space Marines for $5 at the last convention I went to. Look at, see, he's got another little emblem dangling off there. I'm going to make this guy part of my custom chapter of the Knights Templar of the, excuse me, Knights of the Alabaster Temple of the Angel. Now, the bad part is I'm going to have to soak this guy in my sonic cleaner out in the garage in rubbing alcohol, because somebody primed this guy with a satin finish primer. And it's just ultra smooth, which is probably a good reason why he was in the box with the other bits for $5. Back here in the back, all these models here, with the exception of this one, these other four are PLA prints. This is a resin print. These are Siggy Marine Primaris guys. You can see they have the Stormcast Eternal Age of Sigmar look about them, as well as the new Primaris look. Unique combination of there. This was printed on an Ender 3. And grab the resin one. Thinking about calling these Crimson Eagles. Not 100% certain on that yet. I had to repair this object in 3D Builder in order for him to print. There was some missing part between his foot and the leg that wouldn't connect when printing. A lot of early print failures on him. Now we'll go ahead and look at the rest of the Primaris. And again, this is a FDM print on an Ender 3. Primered up in Army Painter plate mail. My early thoughts on these is that they'll feature a lot of red, hence the Crimson Eagles. Or maybe take a note from my son and do Crimson Griffins. An Ultimate Founding Chapter of Primaris Space Marines. Oh, and right back here behind him, an epic scale Eldar Wraith Lord. Which I printed out at 10mm height, or excuse me, on 10mm scale to go with my other epic 40k forces in 10mm, such as this Orc Bike Rider. Tell me he doesn't look cool, 10mm. That looks awesome. Here's some Stormtroopers, 10mm. Some Ogrins. Here's another Space Marine base I just recently printed, 10mm scale, which means these guys here are, 12mm, but technically 13 because 1mm base. Emperor's Champion, another Emperor's Champion type model. This guy will be his standard bearer and his acolyte. Some more 10mm. These are World War II Soviets. The political commissar. This base was a FDM print on my Ender 3. 10mm scale epic rhino. Yeah, it was hollow. 10mm scale Soviet World War II light tank. Another PLA printed base. It's really cool being able to make my own bases with a printer. Also down below you'll see I have some 172 scale items. Let's start off with these Fallschirmjäger German Luftwaffe Air Force troops. Ground combat soldiers. German paratroopers. Although I think they only had a few, maybe one big combat jump and then a few smaller ones throughout the war. This chap here is in a hurry to bring the ammo. Another epic 40k apothecary. Back to the 172 scale Fallschirmjäger. These are from Eskais Miniatures Patreon. Here's their officer. Smoking a cigarette. Pretty cool looking model, I think. Reading his map. Maybe feels a little lost. An Ultramarine. I don't know if you can see that Ultramarine logo there, the Omega. Upside down Omega. More epic scale orcs, but in 10mm. Epic 40k orcs, I should say, 10mm scale. Fallschirmjäger sniper. I plan on putting a lot of stuff around him on the base here. Space Marine, I mentioned in another video that I'm working on this guy. I have some GW arms and stuff, but I don't know if I want to use these or not. This is an old sprue. I mean, there's no date on it, but this is from the 90s. I started playing 40K back in the late 90s. Really got into the hobby in the early 2000s. 2003 to be exact. I opened up my own hobby shop in Fort Smith, Arkansas once. Alright, let's see what else. Oh, I have another Knight of the Alabaster Temple that I'm painting up here. I didn't do a very good job priming him. I was trying to use I'm learning how to use my airbrush. I didn't want to coat him too thick, and looked like I didn't get enough, and in some places it pulled up too much. So I'm still trying to figure out how an airbrush works. Look at this Chaos guy. Another Chaos Cherub. You may have seen the short video I did on a previous Chaos Cherub I had. This is a model made by Big Mr. Tom of his Patreon. I believe that you can get this freely on Thingiverse. Still trying to decide what colors I want to paint him. I thought he looks particularly gruesome. Cities of Sigmar, or Warhammer Imperial Captain. Little fantasy creature. Another Big Mr. Tom model. And we have some War Master High Elves that I've got based up and ready to paint, but have not yet started. A War Master, and these are Games Workshop models, these War Master models. Now I have some that I can 3D print from Forest Dragon and others, but I have a metric ton of Games Workshop War Master models. And that was one of the deciding factors in why I decided to abandon my other fantasy scales and just go with 10mm Kings of War instead of 6mm and 15mm and all that. I now still may do that in 1/72 scale as well, but 10mm is solidly in there. All this green here, this is a Feudal guard tank. A missile carrier, to be exact. I don't carry this missile. I have a lot of support removal to take off. I'll make a build video on this model when I put him together. Spot for a heavy bolter. And the heavy bolter is somewhere in this carriage. So what we see is the main turret, or excuse me, main part of the hull. The track guards. And you can see the tracks here. Part of the missile carriage. And then the turret. The gun for the turret. And then the heavy bolter and a hatch and some other stuff right in there. And there's still some cleanup to go on. I also need to remove some support pieces and some pieces of the brim that adheres to the print bed. This was made on the Ender 3 as well. Alright, what else we got? Excuse me about bumping that, didn't mean to. A Pillbot by Big Mr. Tom. I've got this old demon girl, or maybe vampire girl, I'm not sure. Probably vampire since she's got fangs and a bat helmet. But I want to get her out of this base, so that's why she's back on the workbench. I'm going to remove this base from her, this metal Reaper Miniatures old style base. I found another Space Marine in my bit box that I'm going to paint up. I like him as is. All GW parts, no 3D printed there. Check out this Plague Doctor. Little rat on his hat. I've got to find a piece to... Part of his cane broke off during support removal. So I'm going to find a piece of terrain, probably a piece of cork, to stick underneath here. Make it look complete. This model was a Kickstarter, along with several others. A Three Musketeers themed Kickstarter. some 172 scale Necrons. Still got to remove the supports. So as you can see, this was an FDM print. There's several of them over there to remove supports on from my 40K and 172 scale. And the reason I do crazy alternate scales, like Epic 40K was originally in 6mm, and of course, you know, 40K GW, those figures measure generally about 32mm to the top of the head. The reason I do alternate scales is I've had to share my wargame room with my spouse, and her sewing equipment takes up a lot of space. So I had to reduce my wargame table down to a 3 foot by 3 foot dedicated table, but it's 3 foot by 3 foot. Custom built. Me and my son and a friend of mine made it. But you can't do standard games of 40K on that. You've got to shrink down your sizes. Now I can do Fire Team and Kill Team and the other Space Marine Adventures, the other stuff that GW released through Barnes & Noble and their own specialist games like Necromunda. Just fine. I can do skirmish just fine. But big battles, I want tanks and vehicles and walkers on my battlefield. I want room to maneuver. That requires a smaller scale, and that's why I've chosen to go with 172 scale for Grimdark Future, which is the one-page rules-free version of Warhammer 40K. And of course, I could do standard 40K and smaller battles with that, using the 172 rules. And the reason I went up, I misspoke there, using the 172 scale miniatures. And the reason I went up from 6mm to 10mm on the Epic models is because of War Master. If I'm printing a lot of terrain at 10mm, well, I have all this terrain for 6mm, 10mm, and all these others. So what I've done is, and if you've seen my Wargame Problem video, you see where I've had scales everywhere from figures at 2mm all the way up to, of course, the 135 scale World War II stuff in the back. And I've decided to knock all that out. Now the 135 stuff would just be for my collection and photography. And if you look at my community tab on my channel, you'll see a lot of pictures I've taken, rather, with my camera, and doctored them up to make them look like old World War II vintage photographs. But the reason I wanted to go from 6mm to 10mm is so I don't have to make terrain in 6mm and 10mm and all that, because I'm going to play my War Master 10mm models. So it made sense to scale up to 10mm for my fantasy battles and for my sci-fi battles as well. So that's where we stand on that. Oh, I'll show you one more thing. This is a from a company in the Ukraine, Redbox. They made this under another name. I can't think of the name right now they made it under, but it's Redbox out of the Ukraine. And it's a World War I Austrian 172 scale, so that's 1-inch figure, 25mm. And he's got a gas mask and a trench coat. I think he looks very grimdark, 40K-ish. So I'm going to attempt to mod him and about four others into a Astra Militarum squad. Because in Grimdark Future you have squads of 5. Generally, you can increase them, but that's where I'm going to start with and build my armies up from there. Oh, one more model back here. Let me show you this guy. This is from Reptilian Overlord's Patreon, or former Patreon. He's now just doing his own storefront thing. How cool is this guy? I think he looks awesome. .54mm 40K. He's actually probably closer to 60. Let's get the ruler and see. Oh yeah, he's 65, 70 if you count the tip of this spike on his helmet. But again, I'm not playing in this scale. This is for photography. Set them up outside, make them look like they're in a combat zone or just soldiers being soldiers. Anyway, we're at 20-minute mark now. I'm gonna go ahead and close this out. Oh, let me show you one more tank in the background. This is for my Felgas Siege Guard army. This is an epic 40K tank, 6mm scale, that I sized up to print in 28mm, our standard 40K scale. So this guy will be painted black, and will go along with these troops here, which is my Felgas Siege Guard, which I'll have a video on them and describe their lore and where they come from, the planet Felgast, and all that. Very kind of a Innistrad grimdark type place. Maybe a death world. I don't know yet. So there we go. Let's wrap it up. It's 20 minutes. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Come back for more. I post plastic soldier content, generally 40K, but I also do other stuff every single day, and nearly every single day. If it's not a community post, then it's a short or it's a video like this. You guys have a great day. Thank you.